December the 8th. Welcome. Talk about today. Raphael Warnock wins the runoff election in Georgia. Yeah. Congratulations, Raphael. The House is now Republican, and this investigation is the House will be taken. We'll talk about the number one investigation is to look into the FBI on what they did with the 2020 election when it comes to suppressing stories about Hunter Biden and so forth. And the Hunter Biden guy that did the worked on the laptop to call the authorities. We're going to do a story about that. Elizabeth Holmes, co-conspirator, gets sentenced. And the most important guy in the Senate Democrat was Joe Manchin before yesterday. Now, it's not a 50-50 tie anymore. It's 51-49 Democrats. Now, Joe is not the most important person anymore. And with that said, let's get started. Talk about everything that's important to the working man. And we're not politically correct here. So working man means men, women, whoever's out here getting it. We come to deliver the news that's important to y'all. And with that said, this is the Working Man Committee. Alright, let's get started. Georgia U.S. Senate runoff election. Senator Raphael Warnock defeats challenger Herschel Walker. Remember Herschel Walker was a football star and Trump-backed Republican in the Georgia runoff. So on election day, it was too close. Nobody got over 51%, and so they sparked runoff, and which happened on Tuesday. Yep. So Warnock wins as the first black senator of Georgia for a full 6-year term. So let's recap. So Warnock, there was a special election where Warnock won to finish the term of 2 years, and then now he wins his first full election. So he's technically the first black senator of Georgia. And let's break down the runoff. So there was 3.5 million votes cast, good turnout, and Warnock received 51.4% of the vote, where Herschel Walker gets 48.6% of the vote. Okay, so you got more than 50%, and so but Warnock had won in the major population centers in Atlanta, in Savannah, Columbus, Augusta, and Columbus. So you know, the Republicans talk about election day vote versus early vote versus mail-in vote, and how they don't like the early vote and they prefer the vote day of. I think that Republicans, y'all better, if y'all want to start winning some of these races again, y'all better definitely go back to just playing how it is now. Or people like to vote early, and people do like to still go on election day, but like I said, they like the mail-in also. So the breakdowns of early votes, so 49% of the vote was cast early in person. Okay. And then, but 46% was election day votes. Okay. So that's pretty even there, pretty even. And only 5% was mail-in vote. So, like I said, there was a good turnout. People participated pretty good and so forth. And Warnock gets be a full-term senator, gets full 6 years, first black senator in Georgia. And so, like I said, applaud him. Either way, Herschel Warnock have been the first black senator to get a full term down there in Georgia. And like I said, congratulations. We'll see how Warnock does with his full term in office, and we'll go from there. All right, let's shift gears. let's talk about Hunter Biden's laptop. Now, if you remember this story back in 2019, where Hunter Biden took his broken laptop to a computer shop to get it fixed, and never came back to get it, and so the person that's fixing this laptop had access to it, signed access, proved access to be able to, once he fixed the laptop, get in the laptop, make sure it worked, everything's working. And so there's so that in turn started the investigation, because I guess the person that was looked in the laptop, that was John Paul Mac Isaacs, he couldn't call him a name. He wanted to inform authorities in the FBI that there was something suspicious on the laptop that they need to look at, and so the laptop was looked at, and so I let him tell you more about what's happening. So he was on Morning with Maria's on Fox Business, and there's back and forth interview between him and Maria, and I'm gonna play you a little bit of that now. Go. Yep, that's interesting. Cause like the players involved here and so forth is like same people moving around that should be. See, the thing is this. So a lot of this stuff at this point wouldn't have come out without Elon Musk buying Twitter and being able to shine a light on certain developments and so forth. And it's more or less it's a good thing. Like I said, raised this is like I said this wouldn't have came out, and like I said, see some interesting players, because the thing here is that when John Paul Isaacson was trying to sue Twitter back in Florida, then it was he lost. He said, unfortunately, they switched the judge on me and gave me an Obama-appointed judge. I don't know why they switched the judge. Okay, maybe they have. Maybe the other judge went on vacation or whatever. Who threw the case out with prejudice and awarded Twitter the Florida slap statute. Ain't that something? So he threw it out and then made it so he couldn't retry or resue anything in Florida against Twitter. They also, like I said, like according to him, says basically they cut his legs off, preventing him from fighting in legal battles in the future, and possibly forced me into bankruptcy, making it so that I basically wouldn't be able to fight. And so it's ridiculous how they came at him as the way they came at him. Now, is it a coincidence that there's an Obama-appointed judge went that hard against him? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Wasn't there? Don't know all the details, but it is a little concerning that it did go that way, and so forth. And there is also a character in this story that kind of makes things a little funny. You got this former FBI lawyer, James Baker, played a role in suppressing this story. And also, alright, we'll move on to the whistleblower to talk about Hunter Biden's laptop. And John Paul Mac Isaacson was on Morning with Maria Bartiromo, and he pretty much went through a lot and almost lost everything. So Maria asked him, John, tell us what happened to you, and we'll go from there. Go.
Well, first off, thanks for having me on the show. The past couple of years have been pretty intense for me, so I'm just happy at this point that I'm starting to see glimmers of justice, and because it hasn't always been that way for me. I went up against Twitter back in 2021 when they labeled my activity hacking, or therefore labeling essentially me a hacker, and that's a death sentence in my business. So I went after Twitter. Unfortunately, they switched judges on me, gave me an Obama-appointed judge who threw the case out with prejudice and awarded Twitter the Florida slap statute. So that basically Twitter cut my legs off and prevented me from fighting any legal battles in the future and possibly forcing me into bankruptcy, making it so that it basically would take the fight out of me. So you can understand how relieved and excited I am with what Elon's doing over at Twitter right now, because what I've known for a very long time is true and proving to be facts.
So that's what happened. And then so Maria goes on to talk about how Twitter realized that they could not necessarily prove that what John here was doing was leaked. Because like I said, they didn't realize, they said it couldn't stand up to the scrutiny of that. And so they go to ask John what he thought about that.
And you know, even the Elon data dump, which Matt Taibbi tweeted out, Matt Taibbi clearly also underlined the fact that within Twitter, there were claims about that hackable response. You know, they were questioning leadership. Are we sure we can say this was hacked? There's no evidence whatsoever that any government hacked any of this or any individual hacked this. Twitter is claiming that the laptop story had to be censored because it contained the hacked materials. Yet, look at the Twitter files. We know now that within hours after the story was censored, pretty much everybody at Twitter revealed that excuse was not going to hold. One former employee saying, quote, "No one had the guts to reverse the decision." Did anybody from Twitter even reach out to you, John? I mean, did they ask how you got the laptop? Did anybody call you and say, give me the facts? How do we know that this was Hunter Biden's laptop, and left with you?
All right. Maria asked John, we have this information. Some people say it's hacked. How did you get a hold of the materials? And John's response was this.
No, and when we went to sue Twitter, we asked for discovery, we asked for preservation of documents, and Twitter lied to us. They did not mention this involvement. So the fact that James Baker was on the payroll tells me that they probably had a back channel to the Department of Justice, if not the FBI. And that this material, the FBI was in possession of the laptop December 9th, 2019. They had all my conversations and communications. They had a copy of Hunter's signed authorization that was dated April 12, 2019, clearly allowing me to access, not hack. Usually, if you're a hacker, you don't get permission from the owner or previous owner to access the data. So the FBI knew all the facts. James Baker's working for Twitter, I assume as a back channel, and they still decided to bury this, label it Russian disinformation, label my actions hacking, and try to sweep this under the rug.
Yeah.
All right, so we brought up a person, James Baker. Maria, tell us who Jim Baker is.
He was at the DOJ. He was the Department of Justice Deputy General Counsel, okay? And he's there during the Russia hoax. He's pursuing this story, a complete made-up story, that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians. And that blows up because everybody finally figures out that it was a total lie. He's pushed out of the DOJ. Where does he go? Twitter. And he becomes Twitter's head of security. He sends an email telling employees concerned about blocking the story to, quote, stay the course. James Baker leaves the department in May of 2018 before you actually turned over the laptop to the FBI. But this is all really interesting and important to recognize, this back channel, because now we know from sworn testimony that the FBI was having meetings with social media weekly before the 2020 election, interfering in an election to keep this Hunter Biden story and the crimes of influence peddling quiet. So where do you go?
How has this affected you personally? I heard they try to ruin you financially and so forth. Do tell.
Actually, I was really lucky that I could avoid bankruptcy. If it wasn't actually for the kindness of individuals across the country that contributed to my friend's Give and Go, that has kept me out of bankruptcy. So I'm grateful for that. And now with the America Project funding my future lawsuits against Adam Schiff, Politico, CNN, Hunter Biden, and the campaign to elect Joe Biden, I'm not going to wait for the Department of Justice to act. I'm going to try to do what I can on my front. I'm also going to try to do what I can to work with Congress to make sure they have all the resources, materials. I just came out with a book that basically chronicles the entire ordeal, which I first want to just say I can't begin to thank Miranda Devine enough. I wouldn't have been able to publish my book if it wasn't for the opportunity she provided me. So I'm grateful for her. But I've mapped everything out. There's a timeline. I have time and date stamps. I have fresh, clean copies of Drive. I'm ready to go to war with this, and I'm not gonna stop until it's over.
But you know, this corruption.
At the time, I talked to Maria back during the election, and this is what he had to say at that time.
Part of some Russian disinformation campaign, the intelligence community has not been involved with Hunter Biden's laptop. Hunter Biden is a U.S. person, and he would be subject to any investigation regarding fraud or corruption would be rightfully the jurisdiction of the FBI. So the FBI has had possession of this.
All right, so let's see what happens with the whistleblower in his case against all those individuals and entities, and so forth. Hopefully we get to the bottom of this. Like I said, we'll see what happens. All right. All right. Our next story is Republican. I'm gonna get them right. Representative Jim Jordan calls for the investigation into the FBI's role in the Hunter Biden laptop story suppression. Yeah, so Jim Jordan calls the House Judiciary to investigate into the FBI alleged role in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story on Twitter. Yes. And so just like the other story we talked about, the whistleblower. They're looking at it from this angle. And then so Jim Jordan was on Fox and Friends on Wednesday, and he's committed the judiciary to investigate big tech and the government alleged withholding of information to American people. Yes. And this is called from the terminated of the former FBI lawyer James Baker, who pursued holding up the release of documents connected to how the platform deliberated on the Hunter Biden report. And so we're going to go to Jim Jordan and let him tell you exactly how he feels. Go.
Well, even last weekend, I guess he's still looking at the emails that are going to Taibbi and that are going out to the public. So talk about the fox watching the hen house here. I mean, come on. So remember, this guy was the chief counsel at the FBI 2016, 2017 when they were spying on President Trump's campaign and President Trump. And then, of course, he goes to Twitter, and he's the counsel who's making the decision. Oh, it's reasonable to assume that the Hunter Biden story, just days before the most important election we have, it's reasonable to assume, he said, that that's a hack and leak operation from the Russians, and which we knew wasn't. And then, of course, now he's doing this over last week, and then, of course, he was fired yesterday. So this just shows big tech, big media, big government working together to keep information from we the people. That's the problem. And what I'm committed to doing, what the members of the Republican members on the judiciary are committed to do, is get into the FBI's role in all this. Those weekly briefings they were doing with big tech on the heels of that letter from 51 former intel officials that said it was a Russian disinformation operation. Baloney. They knew it was baloney, and yet they were doing these briefings. So that's the big problem.
So with you.
Yeah, so Jim points out that the investigation into saying that the laptop was a hack and leak story was quote unquote baloney, and so they're gonna look into that and also. And then too, Jim, what else? Baker is a key figure in this story that's been involved in the beginning with like I said, the Mueller report, the Durham report, and the suppression of information here. And so, Jim, talk more about him, please.
I mean, we don't know. We hope not. We want to get all the facts out there, because the more the facts gets out there, the better we have, a better chance we have of making sure this doesn't happen in the future. But you're exactly right. This Jim Baker's all over everything. He's the one that Zussman came to initially with the file on the Alpha Bank, which was a bunch of garbage. He personally knew Zussman. Zussman was Hillary Clinton's lawyer. He's all over the Durham investigation. So yeah, this guy's got connections throughout this. We'll just have to wait and see what Barry Weiss and others uncover, and what Elon Musk continues to release.
And Jim, when they come out, Matt Taibbi says
right.
there's no...
So, the Jim Baker guy, this looks like could be the first red herring in the story. And so, I'm pretty sure Jim Jordan is going to get down to the bottom of that. So, we're going to follow this story very closely to see actually what was happening and the degrees it was happening to. All right. Our next story is an interesting one. I know I said it about all stories, but this one here is Elizabeth Holmes, former partner, is sentenced today in the Theranos fraud case. Yes, Ramesh, aka Sonny, former romantic partner of Elizabeth Holmes and president of the disgraced blood testing company Theranos, was sentenced on Wednesday to 155 months, so that's nearly 13 years in prison. The sentence is in federal court coming less than 3 weeks after Holmes and the founder of Theranos gets 133 months and 11 and a quarter months in prison for her role of deceiving investors. And so Ramesh is 57 and was convicted on July 12th of fraud, a conspiracy to commit fraud of investors and patient trust of the company's faulty blood device. So what the blood device is, they said they can get a drop, beep, beep, and they can run 100 tests off a drop. And couldn't do none of that. And so forth. And so he will be ordered to prison next year, March 15, 2023. He was facing up to 20 years for each of the 12 counts, but legal experts expected the sentence would be the same as given to the maximum. So he would have got 20 on all 12 counts, but he didn't. He only ended up with 13 years. Prosecutors filed legal motions last week arguing that the severity of the fraud and needed to promote the responsibility of law warrants a prison term of 15 years. So prosecutors wanted 15 years, which he could have got 20 years for each count, and the judge gave him 13 years. So gave him 2 years off, so I guess it was a negotiation with the prosecutor and the judge. And so forth. Like I said, in the Elizabeth Holmes sentencing, they wanted 15 years and the judge gave 11. So judge is being lenient in these cases. So we had to put that to bed, but there's going to be, I'm pretty sure there's going to be appeals in both cases since sentencing is so far out. So it'll be next year for both of them. The one's Holmes pregnant now, so after she have her baby in April, she's going to do her time, but she's, like I said, she's going to appeal and so forth, say that she was a victim of something. Alright. Democrats ditch Manchin's dirt deal after opposition from climate activists. The Senate had proposed attaching the energy bill to an appropriation legislation, but failed amongst criticism of the party leadership. Yeah. See, you gotta look at it like this. Joe Manchin was maybe, him and Christian Cinema, depends on what day it is, what day of the week it was Joe Manchin was the most important person in the Senate, because it used to be 50-50 tie, and Kamala Harris broke tiebreakers. But now, since Warnock has won, and the Democrats did pick up a seat in the Senate, now the Democrats have 51-49. And they don't need Kamala, and they don't need Joe, because they can interchange both of them on a 50-50 tie. Yep. And so now, all the deals that were made to get him on board on certain legislation is probably going to go out the window now. Yep. let's see, Joe Manchin, the fossil fuel friendly senator from West Virginia, had attached his bill to a defense bill. And the so-called dirt bill failed to pass earlier this year on its own. So he tried to pass his bill on his own, and they told him, "Hey, we're gonna add it to this bill later. Don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? We need your vote on this other thing." And so that agreement was struck, and then now it doesn't happen. And then he said the bill he tried to attach was the National Defense Authorization Act, an annual appropriation bill that will be voted on later this week. It was reportedly supported by Joe Biden and House Leader Nancy Pelosi. The progressive lawmaker and hundreds of climate change and public health and young groups opposed the move to pass and subsequently reform without proper scrutiny. Manchin's legislation would have weakened environmental safeguards for pipelines and other fossil fuel infrastructure. So Joe Biden, so Manchin was trying to add in more infrastructure to move around fossil fuels. Think about it, y'all. That's don't like the fossil fuel. You still drive your car, still turn your lights on, still do everything. I know excuse me, I drive an electric car, EV. Okay, gotcha. But unless that plug on the other side is wind or something, you use the fossil fuel to even charge your car, charge your cell phone, and so forth. So hey. So like I said, on Tuesday, more than 750 organizations sent a letter to the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and congressional leadership opposing what they call was the cruel and direct attack on the environment, and called the dirt bill attached to the defense bill, which would have been one of Pelosi's final acts as Speaker, threatened her legacy and partly climate credibility. So what they did was they took it out. So Democrat leadership removed that part of the bill on the mountain criticism, and now Joe Manchin, the deal that he struck for his votes earlier, and now is done. And so Joe Manchin's power in the Senate that he had, he doesn't have it anymore. So hope, Joe Manchin, when you did have it, you got what you wanted. Because like I said, it's completely over now. Yeah, so I'll be on the lookout to see if Joe Manchin changes parties. Because now West Virginia is a red state, and Joe Manchin was a very popular governor before he ran for Senate and so forth as a Democrat. And so I could see with this move, probably seeing that Joe Manchin moves over and then shifts the pot on the balance of power in the Senate. So like I said, we'll keep up with that. And with that said, this has been the Working Man Committee. I've been your host, Brandon T, and we'll see you next time. Peace.